Okay. Shavua Tov. Okay, Shavua Tov, everyone. We are doing chapter 18 and 19. As I mentioned in the email I sent out, we're not going to be doing the both chapters in their entirety. We'll be skipping around them a little bit because there's a lot of details and a lot of just descriptions of the borders and the cities, which at least regretfully now we won't be able to go into detail. If we actually could stand there, if I could be standing in front of you with the map, then maybe we could see those things a little bit more. But we're going to be focusing on, we'll be mentioning it, but we'll be focusing on other things. And I'll just remind what I've said in the past. Any part that we skip, I recommend that you in your free time go over anyway. So when in a few weeks, in a month and a half from now, when we finish Sefer Yehoshua, you'll know and you'll have the satisfaction of completing the entire book, at least on your own, if not by us going over every sentence. Okay, we are going to start. Okay, just to remind us where we are as far as the story, the last few chapters we saw the beginning of the division of the land. We initially saw the 2.5 tribes that inherited the eastern side of the Jordan River. They took, they got their land. Then we saw which tribes step up. Yehuda, correct. We saw Yehuda, we saw the story of Kalev, and then the rest of the tribe. Then which tribe did we see?
Yosef's children.
Right, Bnei Yosef. Right, Menashe and Ephraim. And we spoke last week about the fact that we see there seems to be a decline in the enthusiasm, meaning even though the sons of Yosef, Menashe and Ephraim, we saw this with the daughters of Tzlafchad, but also the rest of the tribe, they seem to come forward, and although they're complaining, unlike Yehuda, which seems very motivated and very sure of themselves and very confident and very up to the challenge, Bnei Yosef seem less so, but we do see them still stepping forward, taking an initiative, even if that initiative was partially, the initiative to complain. But they stepped forward saying they want land, they want to inherit, they want to settle, right? And that's what we saw the last few chapters. Okay? So how many tribes do we have settled already? We have, we have Reuven, Gad, Yehuda, Ephraim, and Menashe. So we have 4 tribes, right? That have already settled.
Levi doesn't have.
What?
Yeah, Levi doesn't.
Right.
And Levi doesn't have.
Correct. Okay. And the entire congregation of the children of Israel assembled at Shiloh and set up the tent of meeting there, and the land was subdued before them. Okay. Let's continue. And there remained among the children of Israel 7 tribes who had not yet received their inheritance. And Joshua said, up to here, everything seems okay. The Mishkan moves from the Gilgal, right? The Gilgal is right by Jericho, basically. Very close to Jericho, meaning still very close to the area where they crossed over, meaning the first evening after they crossed the Jordan River, they set up camp in the Gilgal. And all of the campaigns, all the battles, everything that was done until this point in the book, the entire nation was still camped at the Gilgal. That's where the Mishkan was, and they were still set up in the same way the camp was set up when they traveled through the desert. With each tribe, 12 encampments around the Mishkan, and now that entire encampment. Now we have the tribes of Yehuda and of Joseph's. The 2 tribes of Joseph, Menashe and Ephraim. They're already starting to settle their area, and everyone else and Reuven and Gad as well, and everyone else now move from the Gilgal, which is down in the valley, the valley of Jordan, and moving up the mountain, not far from Bet El, which, if you guys remember where we saw on the map, so Shiloh it's in today's Samaria. Okay, so the entire encampment moves up into the mountains, closer to, I guess, Jerusalem, closer to the main area that had been conquered already, and that's why it says, right, and the land was subdued before them, because that area was totally in their control. Okay, and there remained among the children of Israel 7 tribes who had not yet received their inheritance. Why 7? As Galina said, we have 4 tribes inherited, and then we have the Levites who do not inherit land. That's 5. 12 tribes minus 5 leaves us with 7. Yes, Paul?
So, Rabbi, I don't want to take us off course, but I'm just curious about the establishment of the Mishkan in Shiloh. Was there divine instruction to do that, or did Yehoshua make that decision, or
doesn't say?
How was that decided to move?
Doesn't say.
We don't know any other.
No, it
was
seems.
there for quite a while.
It seems that it doesn't say, which means it's not. Which means it's. We don't know, which means it's not significant. Okay, but
it was there for quite some time.
In Shiloh, yes, it was in Shiloh for over 350 years. Yes, this will be.
Surprised when we talk about the. It seems surprising we talk about how the place is so important for the Beis Mikdash and whatever, and it just 300 years to establish the Mishkan when it was moving and moving and moving.
That is a good point. That is a good point. I don't have a good answer for you. What, if anything, is the significance of that location?
I know we visited it on one of our trips.
Right.
It was quite powerful to be there.
Right.
But I was just curious.
So there actually is something interesting, less to do with the location, because I'm not aware of any significance that location had. Not far from there is Bet El. So if it would have been put up in Bet El, that would make sense to us. That's the location of where Yaakov slept. That's where he had the dream. That's a place of significance in history beforehand. Shiloh is not, as far as I know. So I don't know. I don't know to answer that. But I will say that there is something that changes in the structure itself. It's not written here, but we do see it in other places being referenced. That the Mishkan in Shiloh, where it resided for over 300 years, was slightly more permanent, a slightly more permanent structure, meaning throughout the desert, and while it was in the Gilgal for 14 years, it is holy, not holy as in kadosh. Holy is completely made out of goat skin. Okay, meaning there are wooden poles, but those wooden poles have canvas, not canvas. It's not canvas. It's what do you call it? Skin, not skin, leather, whatever you want to call it. It has leather, which hide. Thank you.
It says animal hide.
Yeah, animal hide, which serves as so it's a tent. It's an actual tent. But it's not a tent like this. It's a tent that goes like this. Okay, all around you have these, and also on top you have a ceiling which is made out of hide as well. Once they moved to Shiloh, we find in other places later on in Shoftim references the fact that the walls of the Mishkan in Shiloh were stone. Okay, the walls of it are stone, and just the top of it is made out of hide. So there is a certain level. Maybe it's because it's going to be there for such a long time. Maybe because it's the next stage. You go from a level of the Mishkan being something very, very temporary, not only in the amount of time it's in a place, but also the materials it's made from. Whereas once so it's maybe more appropriate for the desert. When you have a Mishkan in the desert, but once you're going to be in the mountains, where it's going to be cold, where there's going to be rain, where there's going to be wind, but also it could be that as we get closer in time and location to Bet Hamikdash, to permanence, to the permanent building, that there's a kind of development here. But okay, so that's so.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to take us.
No, it's fine. So okay. Okay, now here we go. Verse 3. And Joshua said, how long are you slack to come in to possess the land, which Hashem God gave of your which Hashem God of your forefathers has given you? I'm interested in those of you who are looking at other translations. What word do you have there for how long are you slack? What word do you guys have there?
Mine says
Lack.
Slack?
Yeah.
lax.
Lax.
It says lax.
Okay.
Mine says how long will you be remiss
Remiss.
in going to possess the land?
Okay. Why don't you look at the Hebrew for a second? Look at the Hebrew for a second. There's a very interesting word that's being used here, very interesting verb. Vayomer Yehoshua, Yehoshua said, El Bnei Israel, to the children of Israel, Ad ana atem mitrapim. Does anyone recognize that word? Does it sound familiar from anywhere? Mitrapim. Open up, because I see that most of you have a Tanakh. Open up Exodus 5:17. Mitrapim, it's a very unique word. Exodus 5:17.
Mine translates that as idle.
Okay. Lazy? Okay. So, yeah, this is to be expected. Look at
Lazy and lax seems similar.
No. This
Idle.
is to be expected, and it takes us back to when we focused a lot on seeing how translations, to what degree a translation can do injustice to the original, to the Torah. Because if you look in the Hebrew, what is Paro, right? Moshe comes to Paro and asks him wants him to let the people go. He tells him when to go to worship in the desert. And what does Paro say in the Hebrew? Nirpim, atem nirpim. It's the same word, slightly different. Nirpim is active, but by us mitrapim is what's the word of active? What's the opposite of active? Passive. It's a passive tense. It's active tense and passive tense are the same exact verb, and it is a unique verb. I imagine it appears maybe a few other times in Tanakh, but if so, very, very few. Okay, that's the observation I'm making. Now you guys can comment or question or... What is Joshua saying to them here? How long are you slack, lazy, to come in to possess the land which Hashem God of your forefathers has given you? This seems like an accusation. This is not a simple... This is not just a question. He's being very, very critical of them. And he's using a very, very strong and accusatory word. You are lazy. You're slacking off. But the word in Hebrew has a much stronger connotation to it. Yes, Galina?
Yeah, but it's written in Pasuk Aleph, and the land had been conquered before.
Okay.
It is already conquered. And then it looks like it's conquered, but they are so, as it says here, lazy, they don't want even their own part of the land, their own Chelka of the land.
Okay,
And
so
Joshua,
I agree. I agree. Based on what we've seen so far, it seems like they're just so lazy. They're too lazy to even walk to just walk, from where they are to the place where. But for that we have to continue reading. We'll see that it doesn't get any clearer. It gets more confusing. Verse 4. So this is still Joshua speaking. We're going to read now from verse 4 until verse 7, until the end of verse 7. Appoint for yourselves 3 men for each tribe, and I will send them, and they shall arise and go through the land, and describe it according to their inheritance, and they shall come to me. It's actually, I think it's a bad translation. It's not describe it. In Hebrew it says veihtevu, that they should scribe, not describe it, they should scribe it, meaning they should map it out. Okay? Paul, what does yours say?
Yeah, they should mark it out.
Mark it out, yeah. Okay.
According to their inheritance.
Verse 5 and...
Sounds like a cartographer, like a map maker.
Yes, exactly. Verse 5, and they shall divide it into 7 parts. Judah shall remain in his border on the south, and the house of Joseph shall remain in their border on the north. You shall scribe the land into 7 parts, and bring it here to me, and I will cast lots for you here before Hashem our God. For the Levites have no part among you, for the priesthood of Hashem is their inheritance, and Gad and Reuben, and half the tribe of Manasseh have taken their inheritance on the eastern side of the Jordan, which Moshe, the servant of Hashem, gave them. Galina and I should be disturbed a lot more. Yes, Sylvia.
Isn't it a little bit unfair? Because theirs is based on lot, the lottery, whereas the other ones got it appointed.
What do you mean? Yeah.
I lost your visual.
Yes. Oh, you lost me. I can hear you and see you.
We can't see you.
Here, let me try
We
something.
can't see you. We can hear you.
How's that?
Just see the YS, and there you go. Back. You're back.
Yeah? Okay. So yes, Sylvia, sorry, go ahead.
So it just seemed unfair because Yehuda and the sons of Yosef, theirs was actually specifically allotted to them. They said, you get this and you get this. The remaining 7 tribes, it's a lottery. It's just luck what they're going to get. And why wouldn't theirs have been appointed as well, divvied up as well?
Okay, yeah.
Although, is a lottery considered luck in Judaism, or is it allowing Hashem to decide what happens?
The understanding is that lottery, which is guided by Hashem. Yes, that's the assumption. But no. What? No. The assumption is that lottery is in God's control. That's the way for us to understand what God. That God is the one who controls the lottery. That's the assumption. But either way, Sylvia's question is still a very good one, which is there seems to be some kind of change from what happened with Judah and the tribes of Yosef. There does seem to be something different here. Although, if you go back to chapter 14, we do see. Okay, we will see differences, but we do see that they also had a lottery. If you look at, if you open up chapter 14. Verse 2. Right? Sylvia, you see it?
Yeah.
They also had a lot. Okay? But I think your question is still good because I think you're right. I think you're detecting, and you're right. There seems to be some kind of difference here. I'll give you another thing. Okay, any other questions? Any other questions that kind of pop out at us?
Not so much a question, but more has it to do with the proactiveness of the tribes that did Caleb not say, I want this, I was promised this. And the other tribes seem, if they're really not doing much activity, it's like well, okay, it'll be decided by lot then, because you're not asking for it. You're not going for
Right.
it.
So I agree with you 100%. We see here a very big difference between both Judah and the tribes of Yosef taking an initiative. Even if the tribes of Yosef took an initiative in slightly defeatist way, they were still taking an initiative. Whereas these 9 were doing nothing. 7 were doing nothing, and Joshua has to come to them and say, "Come on, guys, stop being lazy." But there's still a difficulty that's lying here, Galina. It has to do with what you said earlier before.
Yeah, they're so not interested in doing something that we see he's coming back to what Moshe did. You have to appoint people to go through land and to see it again and to write it. And 3 people from each side. It's like they don't care at all. So we're pulling back, and it's like we're starting from the beginning. Okay, now we send people again, and you're going to write, and you're going to.
Okay, excellent. You're asking, but you have to take it a step further, though. You're right. Saying, what's the purpose of sending these people? Meaning, if it's going to be decided by the lottery, by God, why do you need the people to walk around and to map it out? Right?
Yeah.
So Galina, you're saying, if I understand what you're trying to say, is saying because he wants to get them moving, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
Right, meaning to force them to take action, right? Okay, but I still think there's yes.
I see that they have to decide what everybody will get.
No, but we know that they don't get to decide. It's going to be divided. It's going to be divided given to them by Hashem. Hashem is going to tell them each one which is the lot.
But there is another question.
Yes.
Why do they have to write it? Why it has to be in writing? And in this case, it's not just by the lottery. You make yourself borders. Just do something. If you don't want to conquer, okay, go, write it. Make yourself a border. Come to us and we will make a lottery.
Right. Okay. Sylvia?
I don't know if I'm misreading this, but it says go in writing according to your heritage. That means it's not a lottery. Their heritage means they know what they're getting.
Very good. So this.
So
Wait, I just want to say, right? You're looking at just a second. Right. Yeah, Paul. We'll get to all of this. Yes, Paul.
I'm just wondering whether the lots is not the allocation to the tribe, but allocation within the tribe. Is it really to each tribe?
Okay,
Or is it
so good.
against what within?
Okay, so I'll start off by saying yes. There are some of the probably the simplest answer, which is given by several commentators to this question, to this unclarity of what's going on here, is exactly what you're saying, which is that they were mapping out within each tribe, because the lottery was which tribe, which areas each tribe is going to get, but within the tribe they still have to divide it up amongst the households, amongst the main families. So this is the simplest answer, which is given by several of the classic commentators. So that is definitely a.
I'm pretty simple. I'm pretty simple. So
No. I don't mean.
I know.
I don't mean simple to downside. I meant it's like the most obvious. It's the most obvious, straightforward, logical way to try to settle what's going on here. Yes, but we're gonna give some other answers too.
Good.
I have a question. Where is it said that 7 tribes have to go and mark for themselves? Because as far as I understand, it's all the tribes have to go. Because when we continue to read, we can see that in the tribe of Yehuda,
Who?
Tribe of Shimon.
Fine, Shimon is one of the 7 that did not get yet.
Yeah, but he gets it from the tribe of Judah.
What do you mean?
So can it be that?
No, within the tribe of Judah, there are a bunch of little cities, individual places within, meaning within the borders of Yehuda's very, very large, area. There are certain smaller areas of Shimon. Yeah.
But if nothing says that it's the 7 tribes have to send their representatives.
It seems a given, right? Because he says, just a second, where is it? Here, in verse 2, and there remained among the children of Israel 7 tribes who had not yet received their inheritance. And Joshua said, how long are you slack to come in to possess? And look at verse 5. No one here said anything about verse 5. And they shall divide it into 7 parts, right? So Galina, there you go, 7 parts. Judah shall remain in his border on the south, and the house of Joseph shall remain in their border on the north. Why is that? Why that seems strange? Okay.
There's a division already.
Right. So it's basically saying we're not redividing their land. But remember that statement, saying Judah's in the south, Bnei Yosef are in the north. Okay? And the other 7, they need to get. Okay, let's continue. Let's continue with the chapter. Verse 8. I know we have several questions, but we're going to try to answer them all together. And the men arose and went, and Joshua charged those that went to describe the land, saying, go and walk through the land, and scribe it, and return to me, and I will cast lots for you here before Hashem in Shiloh. And the men went and passed through the land, and scribed it by cities into 7 parts in a book. And they came to Joshua to the camp at Shiloh. Can you imagine how awesome it would be to find that book today? Right? That'd be very cool. And Joshua
showed me something today. I was just going to comment. Someone just showed me they were in, I guess it was in the Israel Museum or something. They saw Rambam manuscript, like handwriting.
Right, from his own writing.
The Rambam had been signed at the bottom.
Right.
And we're talking about whatever, like 900 years ago. Or
yeah, 800 plus. Yeah. Okay, let's just continue to one more verse. And Joshua, verse 10, and Joshua cast lots for Shiloh before Hashem, and there Joshua divided the land to the children of Israel according to their divisions. And from this point on, until the end of chapter 19, will be the divisions of each tribe, which we will get to soon. But I'm going to pause here. Sylvia, yes?
No, I think it still makes sense. I was just thinking of this explanation you gave about how the lots are for the individual families within each area, but then why does it say it's just going to be in 7 portions? But I think it still could work.
Yes, but I agree with you that there seems to be more going on here.
Oh.
Let's just do one more verse. And the lot of the tribe of the children of Benjamin came up according to their families, and the border of the lot went out between the children of Judah and the children of Joseph. It's an interesting phrasing.
It means they got the whole section in between.
Which is everything, isn't it?
That's everything. Where are the other 6 tribes going to get in?
Wait. Explain. Wait, Sylvia, explain your question.
Well, you said that Yehuda's at the south, Bnei Yosef are at the north, so the land in between has to be divided among the 7.
Wait, who said who? No, you're right. No, we didn't say that. You understood that from the verse, and I think you're right. And by the way, and that is the answer to the question. Meaning, if we remember, okay, after Joshua in chapter 13. It said Joshua is old, he's coming in age. Right? We keep on coming back to that. And it says, and this is the land which still remains to be conquered. And it describes basically the majority of the land of Israel, except for the mountain, what is along the mountain range, more or less, of Judea and Samaria. From Beersheba in the south till I forget where in the north, which is basically northern Samaria. He says that's the only area that was actually conquered. And it says, and all this other land is land that was left, that was still remained to be conquered. Now, they did not conquer the rest of that. They didn't. We know that. It said in chapter 13. It says, this is the land that remains to be conquered. And we did not see at any point after those two major campaigns that they had at the beginning, the northern campaign and the southern campaign. There were no major campaigns after that. So the majority of the land of Israel itself, of the actual land, is actually still not conquered. Now, the area that was conquered is the area that Yehuda and Bnei Yosef, that's their area that they were supposed to. They came and they took initiative, and therefore they inherited. But there's no. So you're right, Sivya. The verse seems to be saying, well, since you guys did not conquer, on the other hand, you need to settle. You can't sit forever, in temporary camps around the Mishkan. So we'll take the land that was conquered, and that's what we saw in the first verse, right? And the land was subdued before them. Which land? They went to Shiloh, which is smack in the middle of the mountain range of Judea and Samaria. And he says, and the land was subdued before them. That land, that area. But only that area, meaning only the area of, the center of the country that runs through from, Beersheba in the south and, northern Samaria in the north. So that land was conquered, was subdued to them. No other land. And therefore that area needs to be divided amongst the remaining 7. Because they are lazy, or they are however you want to translate that verb over there. Remember, Joshua's old, coming in age. He has a job to do. He was given a charge at the beginning of the book. He needs to bring them into the land, conquer the land before them, and inherit the land. We'll see very soon. We're 4 chapters away from his death. We are probably, chronologically speaking, a few months, maybe less, a few weeks, a few months from Joshua's death. Meaning, remember, chapter 13 already, Joshua is old and coming in age. Everything we're reading now, since then, is happening in the short period of time as he's about to die. So, he needs to make sure that they're settled, that they're living, that they have land. Okay? So the land that is under our control, and therefore, how does this answer our question about why he needs to send out the people to map out the land? How does this answer this question? Because they're going to get different land than what they were originally supposed to. They're not ending up with the original land they were supposed to get. They're ending up with much less. And not nearly as far-reaching as they were supposed to.
With the balance going to Binyamin?
No, because there are other areas in the middle. It's just saying...
Okay, so
no, wait, but you're right. It is interesting. I'll just point out one more other thing. You see, you guys aren't looking at my page, but those of you who are, I just skipped. Because from verse 11 till verse... basically to the end of the chapter, basically 18 verses. it goes and it describes Binyamin's land in great detail. From verse 11 to verse 21, it describes the topography. It draws the actual lines on the map, and then from verse 21 to the end of the chapter, the cities that he inherited. And then the chapter stops. And it points out that Binyamin was in between those two. It doesn't mean that no one else was in that area at all, but it means it's giving some kind of statement about Binyamin. He's really like squished in between the two. It's not squished. It's not like he has such a small area. He has a decent area.
We're saying the others are also going to be in between.
They're not going to be completely in between, but they're going to be bordered by Joseph in the north, and because they are going to go out to the east and to the west and northeast, northwest a little bit, but no one's going to be, at least at this stage, more south than Yehuda. No one's going to be more north, meaning from the most northern point, right? No one's going to be more north than Bnei Yosef. Okay. Now I want us to remember, okay, that Binyamin, that what we just saw about Binyamin. We don't need to go and read about all the borders and all the cities, but I want us to remember that we have 18 verses describing it, and he's being described in relation to who? To Yehuda and Yosef. Right? Okay, let's continue. Yes, Galina.
Can I ask? Pasuk 21. The cities that Benjamin got. The first city, it's Jericho. It's a little bit a problem because we're not supposed to be in Jericho.
You're right.
Jews not supposed to live in Jericho.
Right. Not allowed to build. We're not allowed to build a city. It's a good question. The answer, I think the answer is because the way things worked back then, the majority of the people did not live in the cities. Majority of people were farmers. So overwhelming majority of the population lived in villages, lived in the open space where they could farm, where they could herd. The cities tended to be very small. They weren't meant to hold huge amounts of population. They tended to be the centers of business, centers of government. Remember, as we saw, each one of these cities was like its little, had its own king. We use the word king, but they weren't kings of empires. These were kings of districts. And basically, when there was war, then everyone from the villages would run away from the villages. They'd go into the walled city for protection. They'd close the doors, as we saw happened when we attacked Yericho. But the cities, they were not these huge. It's not what when we look at ancient ruins of cities, not only in Israel, other places also, they were small because the majority of the population that were serviced by that city were not living in that city. So when it says Jericho, it doesn't just mean the official city, capital. It means the area. It means also the little villages that are around it. What? Sorry, Paul? Yeah?
Like a region.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now we're going to start chapter 19. Okay? And those of you who are looking at a Tanakh, you could see with your eyes how long it goes on to describe Binyamin's lot. Okay, chapter 19, verse 1. And the second lot came out to Shimon, to the tribe of the children of Shimon, according to their families. And their inheritance was in the midst of the inheritance of the children of Yehuda. And they had in their inheritance Beersheba and Sheba and Moladah. And then it goes on for a total of another 7 verses to describe all the areas of Shimon. Okay? Yes, Paul.
I'm confused as to how can they be in the midst of Yehuda? Does that mean they're not above Yehuda, they're within Yehuda? So is Yehuda giving up portions to Shimon, or
yes. Well, no, they're not giving up because to begin with, it was supposed to be that Shimon inherits, that Shimon and Levi do not get their own regular full districts. Rather, they are scattered amongst the nation. And why is this? This throws us.
because of Shimon and Levi.
Yes, Shimon and Levi, the fear that Jacob already had, which we see throughout Jewish history, throughout Tanakh, very much justifies itself, right? We have throughout the desert, we constantly see Shimon and Levi both popping up again and again as being fanatics. Levi turns his fanaticism in the fulfillment of God's will, and Shimon continued in his wayward ways of being fanatic and not fulfilling God's will. For example, and I know you guys know this, where do we see Shimon and Levi acting in these consistent with what they've done before?
From the tribe of Shimon.
Correct.
He lied with the woman.
Correct. Pinchas, right? Baal Peor, when the head of the tribe of Shimon goes and he publicly, takes a Midianite woman to sleep with her in front of the eyes of the leaders of leadership, and he's from the tribe. He's not just from the tribe of Shimon. He is the Nasi. He is the the president or whatever of the tribe of Shimon, and Pinchas, who is from the tribe of Levi, is the one who goes in and shish kebabs him. But we see it in other places. We see this with Levi, also in Chet Egel, in the sin of the golden calf. Right, when Moshe comes down from the mountain and he sees what's going on and he's horrified, he gets up and he says, "Mila Hashem Elai," who is still devoted to God, come to me. And the tribe of Levi assembles around Moshe. And what does Moshe tell them to do? Anyone remember? Go through the camp and kill your brothers. He tells the tribe of Levi to grab their swords and go through that camp and start killing the people who are worshiping the golden calf. And they murdered 3,000 people. Executed, if you want to soften the blow a little bit. And this corresponds directly to the same attributes that we see about Levi. Besides, what is the tribe of Levi? Which, when we say the tribe of Levi is also Kohanim. The Kohanim are also the tribe of Levi. What is their job for eternity?
Bring korbanos.
Beit HaMikdash. But what do they do in the Beit HaMikdash? So the Levi, what? They slaughter. The korbanot, they slaughter. They slaughter. They skin.
Blood.
They splatter blood all over the place. Not all over the place. On the Mizbeach. Okay? They are surrounded. Now again, that's not all Leviim, because some of the Leviim that are not Kohanim, that are just Leviim, their job, they sing. But the truth is that they do also, when, let's say, during the holidays, when there is hundreds of thousands, maybe more people coming with their sacrifices, the Leviim were permitted to shecht as well. They weren't allowed to offer the sacrifice in the Mizbeach, but yes, to shecht. So yes, but because it seems that Levi found a way to channel these tendencies in a way to fulfill God's will, but he does not inherit districts, he does not inherit land, he gets cities. Cities of refuge. We'll see 48 cities scattered throughout the entire nation for them to be a positive influence on all the nations as the spiritual go-betweeners and conduits or whatever. Whereas the tribe of Shimon seems to have not. And by the way, there are other instances also other instances in the Torah, throughout the desert, we see the tribe of Shimon coming up again in negative, in opposition to Moshe, in the story of Korach. Anyhow, and so they were tucked away. What?
Now, is that in the merit of Pinchas versus Zimri? I mean, it was basically a decision that because Levi acted appropriately and Shimon still didn't.
No, because
Levi gets the role.
No, because we see other places in the Torah where it's not just one event. It's not the one event of Shimon and Levi executing the city of Shechem. It's not the one event of Zimri versus Pinchas. It's other events as well. It's Chet HaEgel, that the Levim didn't participate, rather they executed those who did, and the fact that Shimon, doing the tribe of Shimon, doing the dispute of Korach and the 250 men, where Shimon had a significant role there as well. That tribe, meaning it seems to be a consistent character traits that carry through all of the 40 years, and therefore Shimon is also he's not given his own area, but unlike Levi, who has seemed to have, as a tribe, as a group, over the decades, has learned over the decades / even centuries, has learned to channel this characteristic of theirs in a positive way. The tribe of Shimon is not successful in doing so, and therefore he's stuck inside the tribe of Yehuda, the strongest tribe. Basically they're being babysat by the tribe of Yehuda, and we don't have to worry about the tribe of Yehuda. The tribe of Yehuda has a massive land, so there's enough there for Shimon to have, little bits and pieces here and there scattered amongst the southern area of Yehuda, but the borders are of Yehuda, and they have patches of areas inside. You also have to remember that the tribe of Yehuda is also numbers-wise a very large tribe. So they could afford it. Yes?
And you made a point to this, but I'm just reading line 9, and it sounds like it's saying the land that they were otherwise given was too much for them, and hence Shimon should get some.
So so maybe that was part of the planning. Okay, I want to continue. Where were we? Yes. Verse 10. And the third lot came up for the children of Zvulun, according to their families, and the border of their inheritance was to Sarid. Now you see, I'm skipping to verse 17. So there's 6 verses about the tribe, about the land, the inheritance of Zvulun. The 4th lot came out to Issachar for the children of Issachar according to their families. And then you get another 6 verses. But that's it, only 6 verses. And the 5th lot went out for the tribe of the children of Asher according to their families. And their border was Helkat and Chali and Betan and Achshaf. And then, again, 6 verses. And that's it. The 6th lot came out to the children of Naphtali. For the children of Naphtali according to their families. And the border was from Chelef, from Elon Batzananim, and Adami, and Nekad, and Yabniel to Lakum, and its outgoings were to the Jordan. And then how many verses? 7 verses. And the 7th lot came out for the tribe of the children of Dan, according to their families, and the border of their inheritance was Tzoah, and Eshtaol, and Ir Shemesh. And then it skips 8 verses. That's it. So what pops out at us? Yes, Galina.
I don't know if it just maybe it's just that the last lottery is for the children of concubines.
Interesting. Yeah? Let's see, is it consistent?
They're the last.
The last 4?
They're the last. Yeah.
Excellent point. What does that teach? So, what can you? Okay, so what do you make of it?
say everyone is shavim, but there's shavim yoter.
Well, we actually say that originally in English, right? I think that was that's George Orwell in the Animal Farm. Everyone's equal, but some are equal more. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others.
Correct.
So I would disagree with you, Galina, because I think it's trying to say very clearly, not everyone is equal here. Not that everyone is equal and some are more equal than others. I think it's very clear that it's putting them in a certain order, and there are other very strong proofs of this, which I don't know if you guys noticed it or not, but yeah, Sylvia.
This is just to build on that point. The amount of lines given to Binyamin are almost double what's given to everyone else. And Binyamin, like Joseph, is a son of Rachel, so again, more favoritism.
So I agree with you 100%, but you're right. So you said, so Binyamin has 18 verses, okay? And the other ones here have 6, 7. How many verses did the tribe of Yehuda and the children of Yosef have describing their inheritance?
Lots more.
Each,
Whole chapter.
Like a whole parrot.
they each had 2 chapters. Yeah. Chapter 14 and 15 describe the inheritance of the tribe of Yehuda. Some of it was, a big chunk of it was taken up by the story of Caleb. But fine. Meaning that, what? Yeah, meaning it's still part of, meaning Yehuda's inheritance was so important that they even took the time was taken to describe this one individual. Oh, he's not a nobody, he's a very significant individual. But there are more verses describing Caleb's inheritance of Hebron than there are for the entire tribe of Asher, Naphtali, Dan, and all these others. I mean, let alone the rest of the tribe. And by the way, interestingly, this is really interesting, there are more verses, there are the same amount of verses almost describing Achsa, right? Achsa, and the next, was, a woman, and we've discussed this. She gets more focus, her inheritance, and, that little thing that went on there with, that she was given as a prize to someone, to Othniel ben Knaz, who conquered this, and then she, her inheritance, she has this discussion. We don't see any individual stories in any of the other chapter, in any of the other, what you're trying to say, that from all the 7 tribes, not a single person had any claim, any interesting, attempt to gain land? Nothing? So either none of them had, and then you got to wonder why in those tribes there was so much focus and this one not, or there was, but it's just not important. So the tribe of Yehuda has 2 chapters describing their inheritance, and the tribes of Yosef have 2 chapters describing their inheritance. And by the way, let's go back, look at Binyamin again. Binyamin doesn't have 2 chapters, but he still has almost 20 verses. And look at the division. All the other 7 appear in their own chapter, in chapter 19. Whereas Binyamin appears back in chapter 18, separate from all the rest of the 7. Right? You guys see it? Binyamin, so basically it's giving us, it seems like, not seems, that the story is being told in a way that it's portraying for us already now, and we will see this in Sefer, when we get to Sefer Shoftim, to Judges, and much, much, much more so when we get to Sefer Shmuel and to Kings. It's basically telling us who the main players are going to be. Maybe because they're the main players already now. And we've seen, if you think throughout, if you look at Sefer Bereshit, and you look at Sefer Shmot, the people that were the focus, the people that were the leaders, the people that were not necessarily even the leaders, the people who were at the leadership, or the people that were at the forefront of the events that were happening, are from these tribes. Yehuda, Yosef, Binyamin, we haven't seen him yet so much. He was an important figure, but in Sefer Bereshit, in the whole struggle between the brothers, but he was very passive. But we will see later on that Binyamin is a major player. He's a major player in the book of Shoftim. Major event that happens surrounding the tribe of Binyamin. And then we'll see the first king, Shaul, comes from the tribe of Binyamin. So you could either see this as a foreshadowing, kind of preparing us for what we're going to see, or basically saying to us that already now these are the tribes that at the time they were the dominant tribes. And it expresses itself through the fact that Yehuda stepped up and that Yosef, the tribes of Yosef stepped up, meaning this could be seen as the cause of them being the more important one, or it could be the consequence. I think I understand it to be the consequence, because this doesn't come out of nowhere. We know these tribes, we know their characteristics, we know who their great-great-grandfathers were, and how they were the leaders, and they're the ones that have been pushing the Jewish history at the forefront of all the events since Bereshit. And Binyamin is stuck there right in the middle between the two of them, and therefore, maybe by simple default, he becomes central as well. And all the other ones are quite literally, pun intended, on the periphery. Literally. And figuratively. And it's interesting to see, from a perspective of the methodology, how even without saying it explicitly, it's very clear how these chapters were set up. And if you just read it and you notice, but you're reading it, you get, wow, there's so much description of the tribe of Yehuda, so much description of the tribe of Yosef, and we're told that they're active, and only after the tribe of Yehuda and Yosef inherit, Joshua lashes out at everyone else, says, what, you guys are doing nothing. Those are the tribes that don't do much. Who are the tribes that do? Yehuda, Menashe, Ephraim. They're the ones that do. And that's why maybe Yehuda is going to be, and that's maybe why he says, okay, they got the border to the north, they got the border to the south, everyone else is going to have to figure out in between, but it makes sense. You're going to want your strong tribe on the top, strong tribe on the north, and everyone else is going to be squished into the side or on the periphery of it. But it's very clear that the verses and chapters are built to guide us to this conclusion, or to start forming as we enter very soon into the book of Judges, where there's going to be a lot more events, it's going to be a lot faster, a lot quicker, a lot more happening, setting us up to preparing us for what we're going to see, and the forces that are going to emerge as the nation starts forming as one nation and as a kingdom eventually after the book of Shoftim. Yes, Galina.
So can it be, I don't know, maybe there's another possibility, but as I see it, the first possibility, the division was set for the division after. Because we know Israel was divided to Israel and Yehuda. So maybe this division here, came to division came after.
No,
or
well,
there is another possibility
yeah.
that somebody wrote it after, just
to make it fit.
because this book was written by somebody. It was written by somebody.
Yes.
So maybe it just they did a raham.
So the second thing that you're saying, this would be a classic type of thing that we hear in biblical criticism. I'm not being critical now of what you're saying. I'm just saying this is that is an example of a biblical criticism approach, which comes and says that something that happens afterwards that that the historians come and they will rewrite or not rewrite or write a history that will serve, excuse the word, the narrative that they're trying to establish. And there is a very substantial school of thought within biblical criticism that comes and identifies the descendants, meaning the descendants of the house of Judah, of Yehuda, as the ones becoming dominant. History is written by the victors kind of approach, and therefore they come and try to identify and detect earlier places, places in the earlier texts that were written in order to serve the narrative of the tribe of Yehuda being chosen and being designated by their forefather and by God and by and by Moshe and by Joshua. So there is such an approach. I have difficulty with that approach for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, because I don't see at any point any need for it. Meaning that type of approach, not yours, but the extreme biblical criticism approach, it goes into certain assumptions about history and just assumes that because Torah is a history book and Bible is a history book, that it will logically follow the same patterns of general telling of history. We understand it as being a divine book, a divinely inspired book. And I don't feel the need to try to identify sinister motives in what was written or anything like that. Quite the opposite. I say this fits very well with kind of fundamental things that we've seen before. But according to tradition, Yehoshua wrote Sefer Yehoshua, and we'll see later on before he dies. We'll see something to that effect. That he wrote, and we understand that Yehoshua wrote this book. But I would agree that it could be seen as a foreshadowing, or it could be seen as reflecting. It could be seen as reflecting a situation which was already present, the dominance of these two tribes, which is indeed reflected through them being active versus others that were not, or it could be seen as kind of like an editorial attempt to prepare us to lay the groundwork for what we're going to see later on. Like you said, yes, the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah will fall exactly in these fault lines, exactly in these two locations. But one could say because the characters of these tribes and the tensions that have been there since back in the day in Bereshit. Okay, we're not. Paul.
I think you may have answered my first question, which was the die cast on these tribes based on their respective relationship, whether they were children of maidservants or otherwise, or was it based on their activity at this time in history and their lack of activity with respect to conquering the land? I think you've spoken to that. Sounds like it's more the latter.
Yes.
But what their positioning may have helped decide how they would behave, because it was in their nature. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe. In other places, we see that which one of them got how much each one of them got had to do with the size of the tribe. That a bigger tribe.
That's my second question.
That a bigger tribe got a larger area.
Because I appreciate that the amount of line space they were given is quite telling, but I was curious as to whether per capita the amount of land that they were allocated was more equal. In other words, if there were the amount of space they were given was proportional to the number of members in the tribe.
The short answer is that probably, yes.
Right. So it seems more important how much attention they were given in the text than actually how much land physically they were given.
Yes. Now I'll just say, we won't read it now, but it's very interesting. Maybe we'll talk about it next week. The last three verses, we'll just read them. I'll just read them out loud. And they made an end of dividing the land for inheritance by its borders. The children of Israel gave it inheritance to Joshua the son of Nun among them. According to the word of Hashem, they gave him the city which he asked, Timnat Tzarach and Mount Ephraim. And he built a city and dwelt in it. Because he was from Ephraim, so he got a city of his own, city and its surrounding villages, that whole area, to dwell in. He's retiring. And these are the inheritances which Elazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the heads of the houses of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel divided for it inheritance by lot in Shiloh before Hashem at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and they made an end of dividing the land. That's it. All the tribes are now living in their allotted space. For most of them, much smaller than it should have been, but it's their own fault. Flanked, and they are all now flanked by Yehuda in the south and Yosef in the north. Okay? And that's it. So we've now finished. We haven't finished the book. We're very close to finishing the book. So we had the first half, which was the wars, and we have most of the second half, which was the inheritance. Okay? And with that, we're done. And we will meet next week. Okay. Shavua Tov, everyone.
Shavua Tov.